That's their whole new marketing thing is, because they're like, we're not building ski areas anymore, we're just gonna do urban transportation.
It is controlled.
Do I need to go and see? My bags.
Good.
Sorry.
But I know.
Well, let's-
You have a key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this.
Oh, thanks, I got it.
Bonnie, we need one more, or are we good?
We need
Oh,
one more, cause,
Okay.
You're
we don't
good.
have anybody online, so.
But I think they have.
No, we're good.
Yeah, you got four.
Yeah.
Oh, I do. I didn't see Doug walk in. Sorry. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that.
Can't ignore Jeff for too much longer, Bonnie.
I know, he's on like vacation time or something. Oh, hang on a second. I didn't push the right one.
That's gonna be a great. So.
Now we are good to go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pickens County Planning and Zoning regular meeting. It's Tuesday, May 21st. And we are all here. We have Jeffrey present. Wait a second. Start over again. Tuesday, May 21st, Pickens County Planning and Zoning meeting. And then do we have any commissioner comments? No one? So we have Doug, Suzanne, and Jeffrey present. Any comments from planning staff?
Oh, here they come. Awesome. Okay, awesome.
Thanks, Doc.
Comments?
Do we have anything? I look at the attorney.
I don't know.
I didn't have anything prepared. I thought I needed to update you on, so, other than, oh, I guess we are a schedule shift.
Yep.
I think Bonnie's already been in touch with you that, there will not be a June, sorry, that fourth meeting.
Yep.
And we've moved that item to July 2nd.
Okay.
And that was a noticing issue on our end. So we'll clean that up and,
So it will not occur on what was today?
sorry, I will.
Jeff
June
Gutenberg.
June 4th. So then we only had one item on that agenda, so it looks like that would be a no meeting night for you. We have June 18th then, and then July 2nd.
I would love to hear from Ryan another day if the Supreme Court actually repealed use of exaction by counties.
Oh, through impact fees?
Yeah.
No, they didn't. So that case is called Sheets versus El Dorado County, California.
Okay.
And I believe it was decided on April 12th, 2024. And that did involve impact fee. In that case, it was a road impact fee. And what the Supreme Court said in short was that simply because an impact fee is imposed on a property, so in Pickens County, our impact fees are like employee housing impact fee and road impact fee. And the concept behind impact fees is to have development pay its own way. That's a general, like, people throw out there. What the United States Supreme Court said is that simply because an impact fee is imposed on a broad class of properties. So in Pickens County, it's impact fees are imposed on all properties in unincorporated Pickens County. So that's what it means by a broad class of properties. Simply because a fee is imposed on a broad class of properties and is adopted or imposed legislatively. So through legislative impact fee adopted in this case by the Board of County Commissioners, simply because that is the circumstance, does not mean that the fee is exempt from being examined under the prohibition against takings protected by the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. So the county in that case had been arguing, hey, this is a legislatively adopted impact fee. Therefore, takings analysis is not applicable. And the United States Supreme Court, unsurprisingly, frankly, said, no, you got to make sure you apply takings analysis to that particular circumstance. And that's the status quo going forward. that's what we do in Pickens County anyway. And I think the Colorado impact fee statute is set up to cover that basis, but it's foreshadowing perhaps of what the United States Supreme Court would do with the more substantive challenge to the impact fee schedule. Yeah. It's interesting, but excellent. Yeah. Happy to talk more about it.
Thank you.
All right,
Are ties allowed in this meeting?
I know, I was gonna ask.
I was in court today and I've been sitting here most of the day. Yes.
He did take the jacket off.
I was wearing a jacket, but it's a little warm in here.
Yeah,
It is.
sorry about that. It's usually cold.
Don't be kicking me under the table, you
Well, I guess, this evening we have, the item we have on our agenda is, land use action, J&A, Albany Family LLP Conservation Development PUD. Rezoning to CPPUD activity envelope. Leslie.
Hi, okay, Leslie Lamont, Senior Planner for the record. So the application before you is a request to rezone the property from RS 30 to Conservation Development PUD. And the reduction in GMQS exempt square footage for the creation of transfer development rights and activity envelope review. Jocelyn Woods is representing the Arbany family. The Arbany family, only some of the Arbany family. And she'll make her presentation after I give you an overview of the code and the project. And I'll let Jocelyn present the history of the property for you and its characteristics of the property. Paul Holsinger should be here on Zoom.
Yes.
He said he was going to be. Oh, great.
Yes,
So
he
if you have any questions for him, he's available. So the process for this is review by the P and Z and recommendation to BOCC. I have a clarification I have to provide to you all. When I was preparing the memo and also, this all started when I found the application complete. I found the application complete on December 11th. And Bonnie, you're gonna have down here.
Okay.
Because I can't see all that in there. So anyway, I found the application complete on December 11th. And I was mistaken in assuming that the application was complete after the BOCC approved ordinance 36, which reduced the overall floor area in the county to 9,250. The BOCC ultimately approved that ordinance on December 20th. So the application that Jocelyn submitted, which was in your packet, that was presuming a maximum allowable floor area for the CDPUD at 11,250 is what is correct. So there's some changes in my resolution that I need to make. So instead of going from 9,250 and looking at the reduction of floor area from 9,250, and I'll explain all this to you guys, which equated to 3 TDRs, the applicant is requesting 4 TDRs, going a reduction in floor area from 11,250. And we got that sorted out this morning. So, and what?
So now you should be able to see your top.
Okay. Shouldn't that, there we go. So this is the code section that was in place prior to December 20th. 11,500 is the maximum floor area, but when an applicant wants to reduce the amount of residential floor area on the property, they start with 11,250. And then it's 1 TDR for each 2,500 square feet. That did not change in the code. So this is, my PDF has like gotten really weird on me, but so this is the context of the property. This property is one of 5 in-holding parcels that are surrounded by Forest Service property. And the red square on the far left is the J&A Arbany LLP, family LLP. This big parcel here is approximately 400 acres that Pickens County Open Space purchased. This property over here is related to the Arbany Boutard family. And these 2 properties here are privately held as well. So these 2 properties and this property down here are privately held properties. The access to the property is, if you all are familiar with Spring Gulch, if you go to cross-country ski at Spring Gulch, as you come out of Carbondale, you keep going on North Thompson Creek, and the North Thompson Creek Road basically ends at the subject property. It's just easy to use my cursor. So currently, the top 80 acres of the property is held in a conservation easement by ABLT. It's like the top 80 acres. It's 160 acres. So the applicant is proposing to rezone the property to conservation development PUD, put a conservation easement on the rest of the property. The conservation easement will be held by Pitkin County. They have identified an activity envelope around the current existing development. And I'm not sure this is a good representation. If you guys can see this. Right around here. Oh my God. Right here is the activity envelope that surrounds, there's a small cabin that is 560 square feet. And then adjacent to the cabin is a bunkhouse. The bunkhouse does not have a bathroom or running water, and the bunkhouse is 336 square feet. There are several outbuildings, a couple tool sheds. There's a shed around the spring, the potable spring. And there's a small loafing shed building. There's also existing ponds on the property, and then North Thompson Creek, as you can see in the below the activity envelope, North Thompson Creek runs across the bottom of the property, and is, according to CPW, if you read the referral comments, if you were able to open the referral comment attachment, there's high riparian value along North Thompson Creek. There's a lot of beaver dams, and the ponds then flow into, those are man-made ponds, but the ponds flow into North Thompson Creek. So currently, and I think if you may have seen in my memo or in the resolution, the application said that there was an outhouse on the property. That's a typical temporary porta potty. And now that the snow's off the road, the porta potty will be removed. It's been abandoned. It's not used. The cabin has a bathroom and running water. So currently there's 896 square feet of residential space on the property. As I said, ABLT has an conservation easement on the top 80 acres. And as part of that conservation easement, there's a limit to 1,500 square feet of agricultural buildings in the ABLT easement. So as an incentive in the land use code, you know, we have a lot of incentives in the land use code for private property owners to conserve their property. So a property owner can request a CD PUD review, and if approved, there's several options in the code that an applicant can choose. There's 3 different development options, and I think those came about as the CDPUD section of the code was kind of evolving based upon the applicant that was looking to use CDPUD at the time. This applicant has chosen option 3, and it's intended to allow continued agricultural use of the property with limited development and a limited intensity of development. So the family runs about 40 pairs of cows in the summertime up there. And then the Bertards have a pretty robust horse leasing business, and in the summertime, they run their horses up there as well. So as I stated in the resolution, the CDPUD option 3 provides an exemption, GMQS exemption for up to 11,500 square feet of floor area for 2 principal single-family residents. The applicant is proposing to limit the total residential floor area on the property to 1,250. CDPUD also provides a GMQS exemption for 2 1,000 square foot caretaker dwelling units. The applicant is not proposing to develop caretaker dwelling units. The CDPUD also provides for unlimited floor area for agricultural buildings. The applicant is proposing to limit the amount of agricultural square footage to the 1,500 square feet that is within the AVLT conservation easement. However, I believe there's no development proposed at the time, but I believe the applicant is looking that if there were to be up to 1,500 square feet of ag buildings, it would be on the Pickens County conservation easement portion. You can clarify that.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
It just makes sense, given the location of the other existing structures and the ponds and such.
Yeah.
Kind of be there.
Yeah.
So,
So in total, the entire 160 acres will be conserved with conservation easements. And Pickens County Open Space is still discussing with AVLT whether that conservation easement will continue to be held by the 2 separate entities or jointly, or if Pickens County will take over the whole conservation easement. So in exchange for limiting the amount of development and intensity of development on the property, the applicant is requesting 4 transferred development rights. So the code still provides 2,500 square feet, 1 TDR equals 2,500 square feet. The applicant is proposing to reduce the allowable residential floor area to 1,250. So they're reducing it by 10,000 square feet, which equals 4 TDRs.
I just can't wait to ask you this. Has anybody bought the movie rights yet? Good night.
Is that correct?
Never ask Leslie.
Don't
that
ever
question.
ask me that.
There's a few inconsistencies.
Don't
here,
put her
right?
on the
Yeah.
spot.
Joe.
correct.
Well, my math was wrong initially because we thought the application
92.
Right.
was 9250. And so that's why in your resolution, in your memo, we were recommending 3 TDRs. But as I said, we got that all sorted out this morning. And the code is funky because it says you're allowed a maximum 11,500. But when you start reducing your square
Okay, that
footage,
makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, it's 11
Forty-
11,250.
2,500 is 10,000 and 1,500.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So this is the survey that they submitted, and I think it just gives a little more clarity where the activity envelope is versus Thompson Creek. and the ponds. And you can see the section line, the heavy dash line above the activity envelope. Again, above that is the AVLT 80 acres, and below is what they're proposing for new conservation. So as part of a CDPUD, we look at activity envelope and site plan review. We're only looking at activity envelope with this because they're not proposing any development. So we're not looking at site plan review. Any new development would require site plan review. Again, and the activity envelope, basically surrounds the existing development of the property. The ponds and the fences and the gates and the road, we talked with Paul Holsinger, and we felt that rather than create other activity envelopes around those kind of agricultural uses, that the conservation easement can address how the land is conserved and how the land is used from an agricultural perspective, whether it's fixing fences or ponds or things like that. Staff finds that the property meets the criteria for the rezoning. The proposal is consistent with the 2016 Crystal River Valley Land Use Master Plan. The rezoning encourages preservation of ranch land in keeping with the goals of the master plan. Prioritizes ag land over ex-urban development and promotes conservation policies and conservation easements. The rezoning preserves the rural character of the land, which is very similar to the surrounding properties on the land. The CDPUD is another creative way to encourage property owners to conserve the property and limit the density on the property. The rezoning will reduce the amount of development on the property and the amount of square footage of development on the property. And it doesn't increase demands for public facilities. Staff also recommends approval of the activity envelope. The current activity envelope encompasses all disturbance on the property. It avoids constraints on the property. It's set back more than 100 feet from the high water of North Thompson. It actually, the cabins sit up above North Thompson. And therefore, staff recommends approval. And when it's time, we can go through the changes in the resolution that I had to make, if you want. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Okay,
And however,
do they ask you questions?
Yeah.
We can hear you, by the way.
Zach is supposed to ask them if they want to ask me any questions.
Just waiting. Does anyone have any questions for Leslie right now before we pass it on?
I guess, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So the 1,500 square feet of ag. Yeah, 1,500 square feet of agricultural building that's exempt, that's allowed on the upper half, the AVLT half. Are they asking for 1,500 additional on the lower half, or is it 1,500 total?
Total.
So I'll follow on to that. So it's exhausting the approval from the AVLT CE, which granted 1,500 in ag buildings. And basically where we should go collectively is saying the total on the 160 acres is 1,500 in ag and 1,250 total, including the 896 that exists. So the total growth, 896 plus 354 would get you to your 1,250. So you got 1,250 in building structures total.
Residential square footage, 1,250
Right, which is
maximum.
because the applicant is asking for, on page 4 of the application, sorry, we're switching to you quickly. The numbers don't add up on the application either. You have your application in front of you.
I do.
So page 4 of your application says there's a total of 1,125 square feet, which doesn't line up with everything else in the application.
The 1,125 was the two buildings.
Or are you including?
No.
896 is the existing 2 buildings.
Correct,
So on page 4 of the application,
including the existing right, so it's,
That doesn't add up. You're shortchanging yourself. It should be 1250, right?
Yes, that's what the approval is, and that was the
Okay,
request.
so no, your facial expression said I'm right. That's cool. So
say no more then.
No, but- no, but-
That is correct, it should be
so-
1250.
so again,
I don't know why.
Collective, what we're looking for is 1250 in total structure.
That's correct,
Which is above the 896 by 384.
exactly, so
And
the,
1500, it's all gonna happen on the south side of the parcel. That's cool. But the AVLT CE has to be updated and negate any agricultural growth on the north side. I mean, basically, what I'm looking for is you don't come back in 100 years when there's another family. And we didn't codify this correctly. So that's where I would love the application to reflect when it goes to the second reading, all the correct square footages throughout,
Right,
so.
right. And I just want to make,
Yeah.
the 1250
Total,
is total residential,
including the 896, so the potential
Yeah.
growth then,
is up to
Is-
1250 for residential, and then the additional 1500 for ag.
understood, same page. But it's on the 160 acres, it's, again, it's negating what's already been approved through AVLT.
Yes,
Through that C.
it's not negating as it's
You're moving-
honoring, it's honoring the AVLT
Right.
restriction, and it's just moving it down off of the AVLT easement.
And
and,
then,
and in addition, it's essentially saying we could have unlimited agricultural square footage, not on the AVLT side, but on the Pickens County
Right.
side. But we don't choose to do that. We don't need to have any more than 1,500. But since our agricultural operations are essentially on the Pickens County parcel, we would prefer to retain our 1,500 square feet and move it just off of AVLT. We don't have to do anything with the AVLT easement. We just can't build more than 1,500 there. And assuming that our development plan requires the 1,500, the limitation limits the whole kit and caboodle to 1,500 square feet, then I think we're good. And it's 354 additional residential
correct, same
square
page,
feet. And
agreed.
I will amend by letter and clarify that, and Leslie, you plan to amend by,
Sure, I'm
What
amending
you've got.
the- yeah.
It'll, this way, we won't have the same conversation at BOCC, so thank you for updating that. The last question for Leslie, or second last, is, so if you look at the map, all the other parcels around this parcel are high fire, both at the state level as well as the county level. And to say it's not rated seems somewhat disingenuous in 2024 and somewhat disingenuous in 1995. And I realize we're not doing anything structurally, but it seems like the appropriate thing, both in the reso as well as the memo, is that this should be mapped as a high fire. As per the Colorado State Forest Service, not Jeffrey Woodruff, as per Colorado State Forest Service.
Per Jeffrey Woodruff's recommendation. Yeah.
And the maps are in your inbox.
Yes, thank you. And per your questions, Carbondale Rural Fire Protection District did give me a very cursory approval on the application in their SAGES review. Yesterday, they said approved. So with your questions today that you sent me, I sent those back to Carl Oliver, and I asked him if he could respond a little bit. And yeah, he has not been on the property, but he said utilizing the ponds could be used for firefighting purposes, and North Thompson Creek could also be used for firefighting purposes. And again, if there was a site plan review as part of this, then we'd really get into wildfire mitigation. But there are heavily forested slopes surrounding the property, but not the center of the property are irrigated pastures and the ponds and the river.
I think even in the application, it calls out it's fir and spruce, so those are both.
Right.
hashtags.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, there's no building going on, but it seems, again, disingenuous to say it's unmapped.
Yeah.
I'm good with staff.
I will reflect that in the reso. changing the mapping.
I had a just quick question. Can you put the first, slide back up, showing
The in holdings,
the various parcels? And then, what's the one in red?
that's the property we're talking about.
Okay. And then, the rest of it is, tell me that again, like,
All of this, so the yellow lines, the neon yellow lines are parcel boundaries. Except for the red, that's the Arbany family property. So this big parcel here is owned by Picken County Open Space. And this is a separate private in-holding. This is a separate private in-holding, and this is a separate in-holding. And the Picken County Open Space property is roughly 400 acres. The lower property, your sister's. property,
80.
80, and Yank Creek is
40 plus.
40 plus, and
Star.
John? Yeah, 40 plus and 40 plus, yeah.
are there any, public trails through here?
No, no, Paul can answer this, but Picken County Open Space has yet to do a management plan for their property. And because North Thompson Creek goes through private property here, there's a locked gate here to get in to the property, to get into all these properties.
Okay, that's all I have.
Anyone else have any questions for Leslie before we pass it over? Jocelyn?
Thank you.
Okay, please stop
And-
sharing.
okay. I just want to see if I can get this technology to work. I share,
Mhm.
and I share this. And then I full screen it. Okay, I do have a slideshow for you, which will provide, I think, a lot of clarification as far as what it looks like and what it looks like when it's being used in its agricultural capacity. But first, I wanted to introduce some of the Arbany / Bertard family members. That Ty Bertard is just here, and Ty Bertard is Jack and Ardeen Arbany's grandson. And he is currently one of the he handles most of the agricultural operations on the property involving cattle. Next to Ty is Ty's father, Jeff Bertard. And next to Jeff is Ty's mom, Bambi Arbany Bertard. And she is Jack and Ardeen Arbany's daughter. And so they comprise some of the limited, partnership owners. And I will tell you that this property has been in the Arbany family for 92 years. And that it has been used agriculturally for 92 years. Ty has 2 children who are currently assisting in the agricultural operations and are learning, and they are the 6th generation to operate ag on this property.
And Kai, I have a question. Your wife is from another long time family here.
The Wagner,
Yes, and so how old are your 2 children?
10 and 7.
Gosh. I guess we've all seen pictures of them on the left with their grandfather.
Yep.
Right, Tony, yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so with that being said, the CDPUD option 3 requires a commercial agricultural component as well as a limited residential component. The current family members use this property as respite and recreation as well as for agricultural uses, and they have 0 interest in wanting to see this be developed. However, as you know, they're not the only members of this contingency, and it is important for there to be some monetization of this property in order for them to be able to keep it in their family. And it is with the TDRs that they hope to accomplish this. So without further ado, you guys are up for a 3.3 minute and 44-second slideshow of the property. And do you mind if I put on some music to go with it?
I was gonna ask you, that's what I was gonna be kidding.
No, I
After
could,
92 years, we could probably put up with 3 minutes.
okay.
I was reading it and little bluebirds started
Battery
sitting on my shoulders.
Connected to Chelsea's iPhone too.
Yes, Chelsea's iPhone. All right, so let me get this teed up and make sure it's not too loud. Okay, so this is looking at the cattle at the entryway bridge that we drove across to get to the property yesterday for the site inspection. And so I'm gonna start these things. Let's go. That's Jack. Okay, that was it. Any questions? It's pretty cool. I went up there for the first time yesterday with Leslie and a couple of other people from the county and such. And I think it's really important that this property be conserved and we ask, you know, that you let the Board of County Commissioners know that this is definitely a property worth conserving and that it complies with the CDPUD zoning, that it's the perfect fit for the option 3, the commercial agriculture and residential and that's what we're asking today. And if you have any questions for me, if you have any questions for Bambi, Jeff, or Ty, we'd love to answer them.
Commissioner, questions? Jeff?
So 2 questions. Any potential for public access, fishing easements, anything else in terms of the CE and or
I don't know how they would
access?
get there. I mean, it is, unless through the Pitkin County property, that is the only access point is. And frankly, I was, having seen it on paper
Yeah.
100 times over the last 3 years, there really isn't. It took so long to get there. Were you surprised by how long it took to get up there? I mean, we drove 5 miles an hour up that road and by the time we got up there, it was really quite a haul. And so are you,
Always asking.
yeah, always asking. I'm not
What's the public benefit other than conservation? And I mean.
conservation,
Oh my gosh, did you really say that?
promotion of
No,
agriculture.
The question
Say
was,
it again.
the question was a fishing easement.
Yeah.
It's always, what else is the public benefit, I think was the question.
That's what you were fishing for?
Well,
I'm a vegetarian, but you know, and then I have a question, for Ty, Jeff and Bambi. If we could add one recital to the application, which is in 8 years' time, will you come back and apply for Centennial Farm and Ranch? So in other words, the only other 100-year farm in Pitkin County today, I'll redeem myself now with this. The only other 100-year farm is your neighbor over at Sunfire.
So,
Yeah, so we would like to see in this resolution an addition saying that you should, you don't have to, it's a condition of approval, you should file as a Centennial Farm and Ranch in 2032. So that you'd be, it's a friendly condition of approval, because we would like to see 200-year ranches.
So I'd like to see that too.
And Jeff, has the Sewell family, has it been in the same family for 100 years?
100 years, yeah.
So we just
Yeah,
were
no.
asking how many others there were that have been in the same family
One
92
in
years.
Pitkin County.
One.
Before I say yes, what's the process?
It's through History Colorado. It's, and again,
I'll do it for you.
it's a friendly amendment.
Yeah.
Basically, and it would be, I don't want to say it's cute to go to the VLCC, but it's a friendly amendment. This is not write a big check. This is,
Okay.
we would like to see a second 100-year farm and ranch in Pitkin County in 8 years, and it should be you.
8 years.
Yeah, so
You're doing the
2032.
math for me.
Sorry.
92
She said
plus.
92. Sorry, it was friendly and.
Yeah.
We would like to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
That would be great.
I would too.
so, and I was just gonna, Jeff, and we do have, Paul Holzinger is on the line too, Pitkin County. So he might be able to better clarify the public access question, because from, and anyone correct me if I'm wrong. So what's inhibiting the public access is we sort of have an in-holding within an in-holding, right? And that there's an easement issue where there's no public easement to the Pitkin County open space property. And that's what's inhibiting any access for any trails or anything like that.
Public.
Yeah, yeah. Is that accurate or?
Ask Paul. I think that's accurate, but Paul knows the property so much better.
Yeah, thank you.
Paul?
I'm My name is Paul Holsinger. I'm the Agriculture and Conservation Easement Manager for Pitkin County. The Thompson Divide property, there's a few, well, not issues, but the situation at Thompson Divide is that you saw the access to the open space property goes through private property. Right now, we just have administrative access through that property, so we're not going to open it up because we just can't. Also, I don't think the Open Space and Trails Department really foresees this becoming a Sky Mount Park or anything like that. The nature of the property is pretty wildlife oriented, just like the Arbanese piece there. Almost the entire open space parcel, as well as the Arbanese piece, is located in a Colorado Natural Heritage Program potential conservation area, which all that means is that it's been assessed by biologists in the state. Then it has qualities that are superior to other places in the state to support wildlife. I also believe North Thompson and Middle Thompson have native cutthroat populations as well. So if open space were to open our property for public access, it would probably be for a through trail. But we're not asking for public access in the form of a fishing easement or a trail easement on this property. We'd like it to see preserved for agriculture and for those wildlife qualities that are on that piece. Did that answer your question?
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions for Paul or Jocelyn?
I have a comment, I don't know, question.
Go ahead.
I had the opportunity to go yesterday on site visit, and this was a pleasure. It was a beautiful property. To me, it represents the best of Western Colorado and rural and ag and all those kind of things. The property is at the end of the long dirt road. There are no existing trails or anything close by, as I understand. We talked about some behind on the ridge behind some access or some roads, I believe, from 4 Mile and Sunlight area, but nothing visible at all. There's no visible trails or roads or anything. So as Paul said, there's no current need for public access in my mind. Other than the fishing looks amazing. It's a beautiful meadow. It's really wonderful. I think that the opportunity to preserve it is very generous of the Albany retards. And so I would wholeheartedly support that. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to, do something for ag and for open space, or it's not really, I don't know how we define it, whether we define it as open space or whatever. But this seems like a win-win for sure, in my opinion, after being on the property. And I really support the applicants for their generosity, really, in trying to put a conservation easement on like this. And if it's the cost of some TDRs, which allows the family to generate some income to keep it in ag, that's a small price to pay.
Well, I want to reiterate the word pleasure. That's what I got in reading this yesterday. I served on the planning commission a long time ago when the rural and remote zone district was created, and when we also created TDRs. And at that time, had we seen this, I still don't believe it. I mean, it is really, to me, too good to be true. This afternoon, this is, of course, right now, highly personal. I was reading it through it again this afternoon after having heard things this morning more about Ukraine and more about all the places in the world that are in trouble and where there's just pain and suffering. And I read over this again, and I think I might read it every day. It helped me so much. I know that this is taking it a little far, but this to me represented hope in a very dark world. And Pitkin County and those of us who live here need this kind of hope right now. So I thank you for bringing it along, and I am so pleased that I get to be a part of saying yes to it.
Thank you. Thanks, Suzanne. Joe?
Yeah, I had can somebody clarify the CDUs? Do they have the option to build the 2 CDUs later? As the family grows and you got the grandkids and the great grandkids, or is that being eliminated?
At this point in time, we're limiting the residential square footage to 1,250. There is language in the code, I didn't focus on this, where there's the ability for an applicant to come back and ask for a special review.
There's some
Use,
specific special review uses that's more
Yeah.
commercial uses.
yeah,
I mean, I guess my understanding is that sort of as part of this process, they're agreeing to forfeit the future to have CDUs on the property. So I guess we need to make sure that we're clear if that's the intent.
fine.
That you're good with basically the 1250 square feet going forward.
I think if the applicant is to receive the 4 TDRs as requested, they can forego the two 1,000 square foot CDUs that they would otherwise be entitled to, because that would just be a mechanism to generate income to maybe be able to keep the property or do some such thing. But at this point in time, they're not asking for that. Now, if something were to happen to the existing structure on the property and they were to come in and request, to rebuild the structure, I don't know if it would be in the form of a CDU or I don't think so. It would just be their residential square footage. So, yeah.
But the residential square footage at 1,250 provides 2 residential dwellings. They don't have, the bunkhouse is not considered a residential unit because there's no kitchen and no bath. But there would be the opportunity to convert that into a dwelling unit with this additional square footage.
So if there's no kitchen, no bath, is it considered an ag building or?
No, it's a
It's not
bunkhouse,
Okay.
It's like
Yeah.
accessory
Yeah.
residence.
accessory
Okay.
structure, residential.
Almost like a farm
Yeah, yeah.
dwelling, but without the kitchen.
I guess is there, Jeffrey, go
Would
ahead.
you entertain a motion at this point with amendments to the resolution? So
Public comment, yep. Yeah, we'll open up to public comment.
Thank you very much. My name is John Starr. I'm perfectly happy with there. I am part owner of one of the other remaining private parcels in this holding, Yank Creek Ranch. It is not adjacent to this Albany property you are exploring, but the entire holding is a fabulous possibility for this county to keep forever. I have a 600 square foot Ackerman log cabin up there. I and my family and friends, many of whom have sat in this room, matter of fact, have enjoyed it for more than 30 years. Jack Albany in particular and the Bertard family have worked constantly to maintain the holding and the accessibility. I could not be more supportive of the efforts that are before you today. There are some issues, and Jeff, you raised one of interest, which is public access. Because it is an holding within the National Forest, the road that gets you up there, the National Forest must quote maintain and take care of. There is a locked gate, which it is on the Bertard property, and access to the remaining all the parcels there, we must go through that lock gate. Pitkin County, and when it acquired the property, struck a deal, my understanding is with the Bertard family on access through that gate. I am hoping that as we move forward, we will more formalize that access through the gate. Our property, Yank Creek Ranch LLC, we are donating a conservation easement to the county. The Open Space and Trails Board discussed this within the last couple of weeks and unanimously is going to recommend it to the BOCC. We are very, very excited. I am hopeful for my family and my children and my grandchildren to have access to this property for the rest of the next 100 years. I am hopeful that the 3 remaining private parcels will come on board ourselves. There is one other sort of an odd fellow who hasn't been really very involved. And then there is the Burkhardt property itself. My hope is when the Open Space and Trails Board in the county puts together a management plan, long-term management plan for this, we will all pull together and keep access if needed, but also protect the natural environment that's extraordinary up there. The activity of the cattle and horses is constant and delightful. And I am very glad to hear that this effort will be made to continue that for as long as we can in the future. I heartily recommend this to the board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Starr. Thanks for coming. Bonnie, do you have any other public comment on?
We do not.
Yes,
I have another question.
go ahead.
So is that road a public road? Or
No,
is it a
no.
Forest Service road or?
No, private. My sister-in-law owns that road that goes to her property.
So, yeah, just to clarify, it's not the Bertards that are sitting in this room that have an ownership interest in the property in the bottom right-hand corner where the road begins from Thompson Creek. So that is, your eldest brother's widow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that now owns and controls that property.
And who maintains it?
The road,
Just the private,
Well, we do,
everybody kind of.
the
Right.
county does to the
the
gate, the lock gate, and then we maintain it.
No, in Holden's, everybody.
Kind of chips in.
Yeah.
Okay, great. If there's no more public comment, Jeffrey?
I'd like to make a motion and I'm gonna add a bunch of amendments that hopefully clean up the resolution, or did you wanna?
Oh, yeah, do you,
So let me take a stab and if I miss something.
okay,
And I'm gonna go page by page, so.
yeah,
I'd like to make a resolution of Planning and Zoning Commission of Pickens County, Colorado, through approving the J&A Arbany Family LLP rezoning Conservation Development Plan Unit Development Plan, GMQS exemption and activity envelope review, and certifying the zoning plan to the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, with the following amendments. To number 8 in the recitals, the applicant proposes to rezone the property from RS 30 to CDPUD and limit the gross allowable residential floor area to 1,250 square feet in exchange for 4 transferable development rights, TDRs.
mhm,
Additionally, on page 3, letter D, CDPUD option 3 provides a GMQS exemption of 11,250 square feet of floor area for 2 principal single-family residences. The applicant is proposing to limit the residential floor area to 1,250 square feet. So as drafted, but updating that GMQS exemption.
mhm.
And then letter E, CDPUD option 3 provides a GMQS to 1,000 square foot caretaker dwelling units. The applicant agrees, as also stated verbally this evening, to not develop the caretaker dwelling units on the property. So that already is in the recital. So we're not adding any language there. And did have one question, the 20-year vested right, everyone's fine with? On page 5, 20-year vested right for the activity envelope, that seems generous.
Well, that,
And you can say it's normal.
it's part of the code
Cool.
that we do.
So, and then this board, I think, would like to make 2 friendly amendments. One is in 2032, the family will seek the 100-year ranch and agricultural filing with History Colorado. That would be the second, hopefully, and more to come, 100-year ranch in Colorado like Sunflower. So a friendly amendment. And it could say should, it could be a helping verb, it's not.
Encourage.
And yeah, we would encourage you to file, we'd love to see it and, get the plaque like Jason has, so. And to Jack's comment, is there anything we need to add in terms of language from a management plan standpoint? Or is that already in flight vis-a-vis open space and trails work on conservation easements?
You mean John's
John's
comment?
comment, sorry. Sorry.
You could speak with Paul, but my understanding is that it is fairly far down the line of, management plans that the Open Space Board will be, and ABLT will be. So I think it will be a file before it is before us.
Thank you. And is there anything else we need to say in terms of the resolution that cleans up the current ADLT holding of the 80 acres and the 1,500 square feet of that? Any other friendly updates?
Well, on, page 3, number 14 of the recitals, 14A, those numbers need to change. The 8,000 goes to 10,000, the 9,250 goes to 11,250. B, this 10,000 square foot reduction in floor is eligible for 4 TDRs.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to add the, under 15, where I'm talking about the activity envelope, I'm going to note that it's in with high wildfire hazard.
Thank you.
And then, condition number 3, which is on page 5, changing that to 4 TDRs versus 3. So Jeffrey, this, History Colorado, we're going to make that a condition, not a recital, or you want it? Were you thinking recital?
It's really just meant to be a friendly, we would love to see it as a community.
So we should make it a recital then. Okay, okay.
I have a
And-
question. On the 1,500 square foot, that would be like a pole barn equipment tractor. But does that have to go on the other property? It doesn't, but can it?
No, we're going to put it in the, but in the, near the activity, right? Yeah. Doesn't have to be in the activity envelope though.
No, it's an ag structure, it can be, but the question, I think Jeff's question is, can it be on the
Yeah, that's what
ABLT
I-
property?
can-
As of right now, it can be.
Okay.
Right, but what we're proposing is to, and I think maybe what we do is we just say, Leslie, maybe we could just say we limit the agricultural square footage of the entire 160 acres to 1,500 square feet. And then we don't have to tell ABLT that we're taking it off of theirs or that we're doing this or doing that, that they're more difficult to work with than the county, believe me. So maybe we just say the property is limited to 1,500 square feet of ag.
And then we can put it where we want.
That's right.
Okay, that's,
Is that better?
yeah,
I agree. I mean, I think it's more likely that it's gonna be located on the Pickens County side, but if for some reason something happens there and you want a pole barn somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought I had some language in here that limited it to. The only thing that we say here is it would be in the conservation easement. That is approved by OST and accepted by BOCC.
Letter F on page 3 is where it's discussed
That that's the recital.
in recitals.
Yeah, okay, so.
And letter F is saying located on the newly conserved area, so it would be the.
But located in the newly conserved area of the property. So we would just say, limit the agricultural building floor area to 1,500 square feet, consistent with the AVLT conservation easement, because that language is in the AVLT conservation easement. right now, the 1,500 square foot limitation.
Oh, then it's sitting on this.
So, right, and but it only pertains to the 80 acres. So if Pickens County comes in and says can only be 1,500 square feet. For the entire for the entire CDPUD, and that works. I think it then limits it to anywhere on the property, but ABLT limits it to 1,500 and the entire, so if it's there, then that's it.
So Leslie, are they coming back if there's a new pole barn in the existing 80 acres, or if it's not the existing?
I think Jocelyn had said there's no activity envelope needed for the ag building.
Well,
Correct.
my conversation with Paul was that the conservation easements will handle any ag-oriented operation and buildings. So we weren't at this point in time because no one knows where it would
So you're gonna
go.
build that into the OST. conservation.
Right, we were gonna put those in the conservation easement.
So we're updating the recitals as well as
As
conditions.
condition 2A2. 1,500 square feet of agricultural buildings that accommodate on-site agricultural operations subject to recordation of a deed restriction. So that would be,
That's not changing.
that's not changing. Right,
But the recitals
the recital is changing,
would be changing.
Yeah.
To give them more flexibility.
Yeah. right.
Okay, that's the motion.
Suzanne and Leslie.
Could you
I got a
repeat that?
question.
It's all
Uh,
taped.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
Yeah.
I just want to clarify this point going forward. So I want to make sure I'm in the right place here. The CDPUD zone district regulations seem to suggest that all siting take place in the development plan presented during the CDPUD approval process. And my question for Suzanne and Leslie is if that would typically include siting of all ag buildings. Now, if the answer to that is the Planning and Zoning Commission and planning staff is comfortable with Paul's department exercising its discretion to cite that development within the typical constraints it uses when approving a conservation easement, that's fine. If the typical process would be to identify the location of all development, including the ag buildings now, then it would probably be best to be very clear about whether future agricultural structures can be included on the property that's currently encumbered by the ABLT conservation easement, just so that everybody's expectations going forward are all the same.
Mhm.
So that's just a clarification I think would make sense now. Given the applicant's request for flexibility in that regard, I have no problem with that. I just want to make sure that the record's really clear on how that's gonna look going forward.
Yeah, I mean, if we're not establishing an envelope at this time for ag buildings, then, yes, we'd want to make really clear if it's not going to be permissible under the easement within that 80 acres. You know,
My understanding, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No,
My
I-
understanding is typically under the CDPUD process is the activity envelopes would be established, and although in some circumstances, ag buildings would be able to be located outside of activity envelopes. During the CDPUD process, we would identify that activity envelopes where ag
Yeah.
buildings would be located.
yeah, I mean, I think this is our opportunity to kind of tie down where anything's gonna happen. So, I mean, again, we haven't done very many of these.
Right.
But I think in both of those cases, we, definitely established the envelopes for
Right.
development moving forward.
Well,
including it.
I do have a condition of approval 15 where I say any future development on the property shall require site plan review. That could,
Typically, we're
cover
going to
it.
go through site plan review to locate an ag structure. I mean, I guess all I'm saying is it doesn't need to happen now, but maybe the applicant should think before this goes, think about the possibility that before this goes to the BOCC, they explore the potential for identifying another activity envelope on the parcel that's.
And potentially more than, you know, I mean, again.
Yeah, more than
maybe
one,
there's a
but
couple of areas
alternative.
Where you're like, we're pretty clear, these would be the areas we can.
Well, I think he knows where he wants it.
Yeah, so I mean, if we do, then that's, I think by the time we go to the BOCC, if we can capture that in the final CDP plan, that's.
That's all I'm suggesting.
If you
If
still
you guys
wanna
have an
leave some
idea of other
flexibility.
places you may wanna
Is it in
put an activity envelope, just build that in.
Yeah.
So, that's all.
Yeah, no, I think.
And does that have to be approved by the open space and trail, open space? Before you build it, like the location or,
No, we,
They're talking about.
well, I know, but if you didn't have it, you know, if you didn't designate the area.
I think the best way going forward for you guys to make sure you have that flexibility in the future is to work with Jocelyn and Leslie to identify those potential locations for an activity envelope in the future. That doesn't necessarily preclude the ability for you all to come back in and say 10 years and say, hey, for X, Y, and Z reason, we want to modify this activity envelope. But to give you guys the most flexibility without having to deal with all this again in the future, I would pick some of those places where you got a pretty good idea you want to put an ag building, you know, sooner rather than later.
And would you suggest putting those onto the
Yeah.
activity envelope plan? that
I
we-
think it makes sense to do.
Yeah, it would be on that CDP.
Yeah, that way you don't have to mess around with it in the future, should you come in. That would be the cleanest way to do it, I think. Then you don't have to talk to me or anybody else then.
Like that.
Alright, so we have a motion on the floor from Jeffrey. And then I believe Doug made a second. And then I'd like to open it up to discussion before we call a vote and see if anybody has any further comments. Oh, and I'll close the public comment as well. So that's done. Anyone? Discussion, questions?
Yeah, I'd like to, so what's the implication of the, high wildfire mapping designation? Now that, I mean, the memo, it said, you know, it's not mapped. This is gonna say, okay, it's gonna be all mapped, high fire?
Do you want to pull up those two? Is it-
I think we could just, we would reference whatever the map is that Jeffrey has sent that shows that the, whatever it is, the State Forest Service map shows this as a high wildfire hazard area. That could, I guess, change the,
I'm like, it's kind of convincing.
the, you know, the wildfire conditions on the approval. So I didn't look at that.
which typically affects,
Jeffrey's map is a big red square.
Yeah.
yeah, which it affects development, any new development moving forward.
Sure.
Not as a prohibition, but as the quality of development that needs to take place, correct?
Quality of construction and defensible space.
Exactly.
So again, it goes back to, you're next to spruce and fir, so you're in a high fire danger. Just for edification, that's the.
Yeah.
This is the current Colorado State Forest Service map of the property.
That's the state.
That's the state, and the state is, you know, that is.
That's,
That's the parcel in question. And then the Pickens County map, if you zoom out, it maps to the east, but it doesn't map the subject parcel. So the LiDAR data doesn't include the data for this parcel. But the data for this overall region is Colorado State Forest Service from 1995. The map, the red map that I showed you is from 2023. And so when we're looking at conditions of approval, look at both structures as well as defensible space, we should be looking at up-to-date information that would cover this parcel.
How could you come up with defensible space in such a parcel?
I think a lot of the parcel is open, right?
right,
Where
where the activity envelope is,
it looks from the map, like there is a large amount of defensible space that already.
and
It's
it's,
defensible space around structures.
Yeah.
And
It's not-
yeah.
You know, like a wildfire mitigation plan for the entire property. It's, if,
Yeah.
right, if you're building new structures, do you have certain distances from you to,
I see.
So
you know?
there are 3 ponds that are just below the activity envelope that I think could easily be used for fire, for mitigation or firefighting. The North Thompson Creek is nearby. From a just having been there standpoint, I look at where the cabin is sitting, the only residential structure on the property, and there's no way that it's
Pretty safe.
pretty safe. It's up on a hill. There's no trees around it.
It has
North-
an active fire protection system.
Yeah.
Right. It does have an active fire protection system built in.
That
But
Jack built.
Jack built, put some sprinkler heads on top of a pole. It's got a
That's what
metal,
they-
it's got a metal roof. It's, yeah, I feel like it's not, as high risk as,
It was in terms
As the
of
map
adding
shows.
wildfire mitigation conditions. I mean, we could follow up with the, the fire department, and if they kind of go, here's your envelope, that may be mapped differently than the big red blob. They may be able to say, right, this, where you'd actually build within this envelope is low, and therefore we recommend these conditions versus, when it's severe and everything's severe, right, it's hardening your construction and everything, and then this may not be an issue, it sounds like, given where it's actually cited. So, but that's,
Well,
follow up with the fire department to confirm that.
yeah.
So, by adding that condition, it's not creating any current obligations for wildfire mitigation?
Generally not when it's added as a condition to the, unless we specify, if we were on a site that, said you need to do some mitigation now, and when you're adding new structures, you also need to. So in terms of adding that, identifying that it's a mapped severe hazard, I guess, right, out of your approval, you could say applicable mitigation to be confirmed by Carbondale Fire Department, before it's.
keep that in mind when you pick
Yeah,
your
you
site
can
for the
kinda-
barn. Yeah.
Basically put it in their hands to give us what they think appropriate mitigation is.
I assume the fire department can get there because they said it was approved. And they have access through the gate.
That's a good question to, I don't want to throw them under the bus, but I got very little feedback from them. So these are more questions that I can ask them.
From Carbondale Fire.
Mhm.
think, Justin, I think the goal is the health safety of
Yes,
the family.
right.
Not onerous conditions of approval. The reason I say it's friendly is if you come in to add your 500 square feet. I believe you're looking at defensible space, limiting up
Yes.
trees. Veg management could be limit everything up to 6 feet. Because again, Carl, he doesn't even return emails, so I'm worried about wildfire service to your lot. So, but the goal is we're codifying, this is an agreement.
Right, and I'd like to know if the fire department has access through the Bertard gate.
Yes,
Yeah,
yep, they've been up there a lot. They stayed up there. They brought a drone, looked for a horse with us.
Yeah, my concern is we've lost a couple families that are remote. And we've lost them to fire. And so.
Yeah, my experience is that they have a special key. And a special
They
lock
have the
that's on-
combo to the
on
gate.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike Kennedy is the president and he has the combo.
But through a new development permit, that's when we would get into the materials of construction and defensible space and.
Yeah, I just don't want to overburden the applicant with such a, exemplary application. By just throwing it's, severe wildfire across the whole thing. As long as there's the opportunity to say, this is on a knoll, there's no trees around it.
Mhm,
It's low wildfire, and so you don't have to,
mhm.
add those, construction standards.
Okay, any further discussion? And I am going to call this to a vote. The JRB Family LLP rezoning CPPUD with all the amendments that have been noted.
Can you restate the motion for me?
I'm not gonna, no, I'm number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's my list. Recitals and amendments that have been noted. Doug,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
and I vote yes, so we pass. And, yeah, that's it.
thank you.
Here we go. Thank you guys.
Thank you
Thank you
very
for your time. I'd like to thank the applicant Thank you, guys. Usually we see applications where people are asking to do the opposite, so it's really refreshing to see somebody, you know, doing the right thing, so.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Motion to adjourn.
No.
We have another one. Oh, my gosh. I thought I was gonna slide one by you. It's going sideways.
Editorial five.
Yeah,
How about a 5-minute recess, Chair?
granted. 5-minute recess.
I'm gonna do some. work.
Right? I don't know. I need my guy. Granted, I so declare it.
Objection overruled.
We're good? We're good.
Oh, we're getting.
Nicole, is your speaker?
There we go. Oh, I think it was, it just needed to be.
Okay. We lost Suzanne.
It was just waiting for Suzanne. That door
Oh,
is
Suzanne.
auto locking. I just want to make sure.
Oh,
she's not-
Stuff on the other side.
Did
I
I
thought that one night the door
year?
was broken.
Well, no, like somebody,
Oh,
a year ago went out and then was waiting.
Right, like trying to.
It's Thursday. I would, yeah, even now.
So if I don't get him to the hospital, it's unfortunate his operation. We've got 4 more kids.
Then what's the become?
16.
We still have 4, so not know.
Yeah, he needs to go to the hospital. So then final.
Yeah. I had to go inside sideways.
Okay, so we get our vehicle. We call the ambulance. Ambulance can.
There she is.
So we want the ambulance.
Okay, we are back.
Nights in a row.
Picken County Comprehensive Plan update. Who's gonna start, Ellen or Ian?
We will both start.
Okay,
I
great.
can introduce myself.
Yeah.
I'm Hannah Hunt Moeller, Senior Long Range Planner, and Ellen Sassano is virtual and we will aim to get through this, maybe do questions at the end, and then you all will keep seeing us. This is our monthly update. So
Great.
here we go. Ellen, I'll pass it to you. No, we can't. Let's see.
Oh. She's not muted.
Ellen, can you?
Maybe we should all start waiting.
We can't hear you.
Ellen, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Paul was working before.
Oh, it was working.
Nope. Nope.
Maybe.
May need to go out and rejoin.
Yeah.
That's right, you wanted the break, then you go.
As she's rejoining, let me just kind of share where we're going. So we met with you all last month and a lot of this information will be somewhat familiar, but we want to do a deeper dive into the comprehensive plan process and what that will look like between the existing plan, the updated plan, steps along the process, and then your role as P&Z as we move forward. So what is a comprehensive plan? We talked about this last month, but the comprehensive plan is really the long range planning document guiding policy direction for achieving community values and goals. That's traditionally been in the land use, but this is also land use and administrative policy direction to guide the land use code and other county programs and policies. It's an advisory document and it's countywide. And it's required by the state. Ellen's back, but
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you now. I'll
Oh,
pass it to
yay.
you.
I will jump in then. Yeah, so by state statute, the county is required to adopt comprehensive plans. And by state statute, the County Planning and Zoning Commission has the authority to draft and adopt comprehensive plans. The adopted plans are advisory documents as opposed to the land use code, which is a regulatory document. I'm going to hand it back over to Hannah Hunt to talk about the current function for comprehensive plans beyond just providing policy for land use?
Sure. So some of the framework of that is coming from our approach to comprehensive plan and contemporary comprehensive plans. So this is pulling from the APA best practices for comprehensive plans, which is really thinking about the needs of both current and future generations, but is interweaving and balancing the social, economic, environmental aspects and incorporating aspects around resilience, linking and connecting to regional efforts. So this is beyond land use, thinking about land use and the way that that connects to the other aspects of our community. So asking questions community-wide, what are our assets, what are opportunities, thinking about our challenges and needs, and really broadening it to a discussion around community vision. And just to kind of, again, pull from some of the literature where comprehensive planning has been really focused on physical development, but we recognize that, and as much of the growth committee discussions were, that the physical development and the growth that happens that we're trying to, that the growth committee was working on, is also connected to additional social dimensions. And it's a larger community planning effort that connects shared values and connects both what's happening in physical development to other social dimensions of the community. So thinking about equity, public health, human investment, our quality of life. And this was just kind of reiterating that this was really a lot of the discussions from the growth committee, that the land use is really a reflection of community values and gets at those quality of life characteristics. So this is just to set the stage that as we're thinking about the comprehensive plan update, we're thinking about how this relates to guiding land use policy, but it's also making connections between other aspects within our community from a social standpoint, economic standpoint, and further. Anything else, Kara?
No,
Okay.
I think you all have heard from me often enough on that.
But just to share, there's a through line, right, between what's the APA, between the kind of current literature and the way that we're approaching this from what the growth committee made recommendations on and moving forward.
Thanks. So I'll be brief here. We covered this in April, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but the 2003 Pickens County Comprehensive Plan was adopted to comply with the 2002 state mandate that required counties of a certain size and population to adopt comprehensive plans. And at the time, the primary focus of the plan was to summarize the common themes from caucus area master plans. And those themes really focused on preservation, conservation, and protection around things like the natural environment and rural character. The 2003 plan has only been amended once, as you know, in 2023, to incorporate the Community Growth Advisory Committee and caucus master plan recommendations relating specifically to house size. So the next slide just goes into a little bit of more detail about those common themes, specifically relating to land use policies, again, focusing on sustaining rural character. And some of those land use directives were to support urban growth boundaries, reduce underlying zone density, and there it is, back in 2003, actions to limit house size. So at the time, we had 12 caucus area master plans, and those are the plans that are summarized. At least the common themes of those plans are summarized in that 2003 plan, the existing plan. Since then, many of those plans have been updated, and the 12 plans morphed into 15 plans, primarily as the result of caucus area splits. Maroon Castle split into two caucus areas, and the Snowmass Cap caucus split into two areas. And then we added the west of Maroon Creek, really as an offshoot of the 2012 Aspen Area Community Plan. So a lot has changed since 2003. We've had those master plan updates, declaration of a climate emergency, community growth advisory committee recommendations, several building energy land use code updates. The county adopted a hazard mitigation plan. We've seen a lot of intensity and growth and development. And the state has mandated some comprehensive plan requirements that didn't exist in 2003. So as a result, there's some pretty significant content gaps in the current plan around climate action, housing, water supply, disaster preparedness, equity and affordability, and we've got some gaps in our geographic coverage.
Yeah.
And Hunt's going to walk us through where we go from here.
Thank you. So the approach as we move forward to updating this comprehensive plan really began with the work of the Growth Advisory Committee and is moving through as a part of this Vision 2050 project, which is updating, making recommendations that will update land use and building code. So as a part of that project, we are both grounded by the 2050 core values, and we met and spoke about this last month, but that is around implementing bold climate action while balancing economy, preserving rural and wild lands, as we just witnessed, and supporting equitable and affordable community. So that's our Vision 2050. And as we move forward to update the comprehensive plan, this is starting with that vision as our groundwork and moving forward to establish countywide guidance for land use policy. Like we stated, addressing current challenges, thinking about policy direction for our future. And as we work through this process, as we'll get more into detail, engaging with the caucuses, engaging with the work group, which is formerly the Growth Advisory Committee, as that moves forward as a non-formal body. Focus groups may be a part of this, and then community at large. So engaging the public as we move through this process with you all as PNC. And our kind of more on the approach. So promoting the core values, I think that's something that we will just continue to come back to, as this is a values-driven community planning effort. And updating the comprehensive plan is acknowledging and balancing tensions and balancing aspects between natural and built environment, acknowledging where there's competing interests and demands, even within some of these values, and also expanding to think about regional conditions for the Roaring Fork Valley and our position too on the western slope. The portion of this plan, as we update this, will also identify the relationship between the comprehensive plan and the caucus master plans, moving as we move forward. And so just kind of characteristics of the plan. This is really kind of like, as we're thinking about what this updated plan, where we're headed, as we keep saying, kind of a values-driven, translating and taking that Vision 2050 and carrying that through the policy and through our implementation. This is a collaborative process that we're working with staff with PNC and gaining feedback from the broader community, aiming to connect the process and that vision with our outcome and really have that in mind of how that connects to what our vision is and how that will be implemented. Again, thinking about from a regional scale. And, I think another aspect that's important to us as we think about updating the plan is keeping this as a manageable plan, having it be concise, graphic focused. We have a few kind of examples of other plans that we've been, just to kind of give you a sense of, we're thinking that this is somewhere in the range of 50 to 100 page document. We're not talking about thousands of pages, but trying to update this plan in a way that is both usable for planning professionals, for ourselves, and also as a layperson to be kind of plugged into the values that we're trying to set forth from a community standpoint. So as we develop the content, the way that we're thinking about, the way that we're framing this process is kind of in this funnel idea as shown in the graphic. So thinking about those core values as kind of the broad umbrella piece, moving into plan elements, and we'll talk about there's kind of 5 plan elements that are those content areas, establishing goals for those plan elements, and then moving into policy and then even further into implementation. So it's kind of this honing process between the vision into where we're trying to go from an implementation standpoint. And so just to walk through that with a little bit more fine brush. So the plan elements that we are proposing to include in this plan are, again, pulling from kind of best practices in contemporary literature and research to be, comprehensive in our coverage of the direction of the comprehensive plan, knowing that that's both policy direction for land use and also acknowledging and making connections between the community dimensions and the social dimensions of planning, which is the social, economic, environmental. Again, that really was a through line through the growth committee discussions of acknowledging the connections between quality of life and the economy, or quality of life and the natural environment and land use. So what we are proposing is these 5 plan elements: built environment, natural environment, economic health, community health, and regional approach. And as we kind of move through that funnel, our intent, and this is what we will be working through with you all as P&Z and as we bring forward additional information, is to establish community goals for each of those plan elements. And the intent here is to really take a kind of stance and provide an orientation to each of those plan elements. So that would be taking aspects of what that community vision is and kind of honing that into an orientation toward each of these elements. What's in italics are kind of examples of that. Like in the last conversation we had last month, we talked about built environment. Maybe the approach there is it's a healthy built environment. So this is not, we don't need to decide this today, but this is just examples to think about kind of where we're going with this, that the intent is to be able to have some kind of an orientation and approach to each of these elements that will then filter into our next portion, which is the policy piece. And this is a lot of content. You will definitely see this again, but we want to share this just to give a sense of kind of where we're going and the coverage of scope that this plan will cover. So the policy areas will be refined through the process as we engage with you all as P&Z, as we get further feedback from the community. And also, I think something important to note here, there's a lot of aspects from these plan elements that's already happening, that there's already plans and directive really in motion. So an example of that would be the hazard mitigation plan that the county adopted last year. The intent of the comprehensive plan, kind of positioning it within the comprehensive plan, is to understand what policy direction that hazard mitigation plan is already suggesting, and further endorse and support that direction. So to be clear, the comprehensive plan of including these different categories often is making connections between these different content areas. We're not rewriting the hazard mitigation plan or redirecting necessarily the hazard mitigation plan, but identifying the high level policy that will inform our approach toward that policy that's included in the comprehensive plan. And happy to talk about, we can kind of dig into that further if there's questions. but just to kind of see this all in total, and then happy to pause and answer a few questions, but so again, kind of this broader approach of the core values, the plan elements in these 5 categories, a goal being the kind of orientation and the statement of how we're trying to achieve those visions through more specific actions, and then the policy statements, and then ultimately implementation, which we imagine will include a statement about the responsibilities of who is implementing that action. So some of that may be implemented pretty directly through the code updates that happen in the land use and the building code. So I know we're short on time, but let me just pause here and just see if there's if that made sense, and happy to kind of answer. We can just kind of answer questions quickly on if that part made sense, or happy to keep going.
I have a question. So is this gonna go in parallel with the code rewrite?
This is moving in this as the same time as we're moving forward with the code rewrite, and the adoption of the comprehensive plan in the sequence will need to happen first before the code updates
Because
can move
code is, I
forward.
guess, your implementation there at the bottom of the,
Correct,
pyramid.
correct.
So you're looking to us, you're bringing the pieces of the plan to us to review, understand, comment on as it works forward. Is that the PNC's role essentially?
Yeah, and we'll talk through that kind of more, but yes, we'll be meeting with you all monthly. And as we progress in these different stages, we'll be coming forward to you to say, here's the direction that we recommend. What's missing? Here's what we think is the direction that we would see moving forward. You know, some of those meetings may be more kind of a workshop session, or some may be more of a, you know, how do we carry forward the intent of something that's like the hazard mitigation plan is already, you know, really been established. So there'll be kind of a mix, but we will be, involving you all through the process.
Will there ever be meetings, joint meetings where we hear, I can't remember what you're calling the work groups from, I know there's a new name for them.
Work group.
What'd you say? Work group. But it's a, anyway, it doesn't matter the name. Will we ever be hearing from them directly or working with them directly? Or will you work with them and then we'll hear what they had to say?
Yes, we can kind of talk about how that will work. So yes, we will be meeting with the kind of work group, which was formerly the growth committee.
Yeah.
And yes, we will be engaging with them. There will be an opportunity too, if someone from the PNZ would like to be a part of that meeting as well, to, you know, hear that kind of directly. And we have kind of a thought of how that might work, but yes, those will be, there will be some focus groups that generally are more geared toward code updates that may have some policy implications that then we would bring back to you all. Anything that comes through from the work group that's related to the comprehensive plan would then be presented back to PNZ, as, you know, you all are the decision makers ultimately on the comprehensive plan, but bringing that information back to you will be our job as staff.
And then is it?
Go ahead, Jeff.
You update, are there gonna be updates of the caucus plans
Um,
after this, or?
Well, next month Ellen is bringing forward the update to the Owl Creek master plan that's been kind of in the works. And the master plans that were adopted in 2003, almost all of those have been updated. There's a still that's kind of hanging out there. So those will continue to be updated as we go forward. But so Owl Creek is one, East of Aspen is another, Castle Creek is aiming to bring forward their plan. So they're kind of on parallel processes, but separate processes.
Yeah, I guess largely dependent on what those caucuses are doing on their own in terms of getting their community members involved.
Correct.
And I think to that question, we're looking at the caucus plans as, a part of the comprehensive plan. I don't, I see them feeding into that, and clearly they will be continuously being updated along the way, but not necessarily, I would say, I think what I was hearing from you is sort of as a result of this, it's not necessarily going back to all the caucuses.
Push down. to say, okay,
Right,
this
I
is
think
the
it's more like
comprehensive.
the comprehensive plan is gonna say, here are the policies for the county. Some of which may conflict with some of the things we've heard from the caucuses along the way. That will be part of that discussion, but I don't necessarily think then it's we're gonna loop back to all the caucuses to see if they're gonna update their plans related to this. It will be more on their cycle of, are things coming up for the caucuses where they want to update their plans? And then, we have to, be considering that related to the comprehensive plan as well.
And,
I understand that caucus plans, if they're more restrictive, would take precedence over the comp plan or over the implementation of the codes. That accurate? On a square footage basis, for instance.
So the floor area, we have definitely said, yeah, right, when the caucuses, said we're happy with 5750 instead, but not necessarily, I would say, across the board. I think it depends, whatever's recommended in a caucus plan to actually has to get into the code, it has to be adopted as a code amendment, so,
But if east of Aspen and Castle Creek or west of Spring Creek or whatever don't agree in their caucuses, those aren't reflected in the comp plan necessarily.
No, sorry.
Maybe I'm
Right.
completely out of
No, you
No,
have,
it's a good
the way that the land use code typically, well, first of all, keep in mind that the organization and recognition of the caucuses as entities is set out in the Pickens County Home Rule Charter, as is their planning function to create master plans for their individual caucus areas. So they're very much a core of the Pickens County organizational structure. And there's nothing, as I understand it, with the comprehensive plan update that's gonna change their directive or the home rule charter's directive for the caucuses to participate in planning their individual caucus areas. And the way the Pickens County Code works generally is a reference to the comprehensive plan. But when you're talking about something like a rezoning or a land use application that's specific to a particular caucus area, the code makes a reference to that particular planning area. And that would be, so if there was a recommendation in the west of Maroon plan that was different than a recommendation in the east of Aspen plan, when you're looking at the code implementation for land use application specific to that location, you would apply the master plan that is for that specific area where the property is located. Maybe I went about saying that, no, they're wrong. It's a lot of words, it's been a long day.
Okay, it's more, the caucus can't be less restrictive in land use, right? They can be more restrictive, but they can't be less. They can't say, well, we want to have bigger houses, or we want to have less environmentally conscious building codes or whatever.
Only if they're ultimately adopted into the Pickens County plan, or I'm sorry, the Pickens County land use code somehow, or zoning plan somehow.
So whatever influence they have.
Exactly.
Example might be the frying pan where their caucus wants 4,000 square foot max, that eventually made it into the code. And so it becomes code, becomes a real standard, whereas the comp plans are a little softer. They're just guiding principles. They're not necessarily binding unless they get implemented and put into a code.
Joe said
Yeah,
that a lot.
I was just gonna reiterate that the caucus area plans and the Pickens County comprehensive plans are advisory documents per state statute. So a lot of those, as everyone has said, in some cases, those recommendations then are implemented and become regulatory when they're adopted in the land use code.
Isn't it right that when a development application goes to a caucus, that a threshold question is asked is this in compliance with the master plan, the caucus master plan?
Consistent with,
Yeah, I believe it's
What did you
consistent.
say?
consistent with
Consistent with.
is usually the language. as opposed
It's
to
consistent with the applicable
Yeah.
master
Yeah.
plan or something like that, and that's what I was getting at, and I didn't say it very well.
And is that actually applied? I mean, if
Yes.
I walked out to a caucus meeting and said, you know, develop this master plan for your area and it will hold.
I guess what I'd say,
You're-
Suzanne, is we will always consider it and we will address it in our review of an application. But I think there's always language in every caucus master plan that sort of recognizes that they may recommend some things that may not be consistent with some other overarching county policy. And so some things may not get implemented and there may be the opportunity, say some special review use. The caucus may say, we don't like this, we don't want it. It may go to the I can't think of a great example, but it may go to the board and the board could say, consider that and, you know,
We just had one, there was an application for a ticketed concert in Capitol Creek. And I don't think it even made it to staff, didn't leave.
oh, no, it did.
Did it? Okay.
Told them to go talk to the neighbors first.
And the paper said,
Not consistent.
But I think what I wanted to get at was this language in the plans. It does say if a determination is made by elected or appointed officials that a plan recommendation is inconsistent with broader community goals, does not benefit the community as a whole, such recommendation may be considered but not implemented. And I think that's, you know, again, we'll always look at the caucus master plan and what it says, and we evaluate that in our recommendation, and the same for your body or the elected officials to make a determination of, you know, how heavy to weigh that recommendation.
That language exists in the adopting resolutions for all of the caucus area master plans.
That language about, is it considered?
I was-
The threshold question.
What I just read is the language from all the caucus master plans.
all that being said, I know it's the end of a long meeting and a long day. I don't want to downplay the significance of the planning exercise that you all are going through. Because oftentimes, although these documents are advisory and carry a recommendation, they're more often than not used as the basis, for better or for worse, for rezoning actions or changes to land use code to allow a particular use in a location in the county that was not allowed previously. And it's easy to ignore that when you're going through this planning exercise. But the master plan and the attendant caucus plans are often the basis that large scale changes or impactful changes are made to either zoning or use regulation in the overall code. And they often serve as a means or the basis by which the Board of County Commissioners makes a decision one way or the other. So I can't emphasize enough that although this is a advisory document, the policy implications of it carrying forward are long reaching and do have a very real impact on land use code changes and zoning actions and the approval of developments like the one we just reviewed right now. So it is important. The Albany application was a rezoning application that was supported by the recommendations in the applicable planning. I believe it was the Crystal River.
Yeah.
So the very basis to support that rezoning action was set forth in one of these advisory documents that we're talking about right now. So it's a very important process in the county.
You went over that sort of broad, let me see. I appreciate your doing this again and telling us where we fit in the process. It helps a lot. And you did it in the last meeting. And I can't remember what that was about, but I appreciated it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Shall we've got a little bit more, so this was kind of framing the content, and then we wanted to go through our process and kind of more next steps. Shall we carry on? Great.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and run us through the planning process. We put together a planning process roadmap that includes 5 steps. And we are in step 1, the launch the comp plan process. And that really is to determine where we are now by doing analysis on existing conditions, launching into an existing conditions analysis that's really going to provide the baseline to help us establish where we want to go from here. And we've got another slide that goes into a little more detail on that. Step 2 is going to be really looking at topic area groundwork and relating back to the pyramid graphic that Hannah Hunt just went through. It's really about establishing those planned elements and the community-oriented goals. And that's going to take a lot of work with you, but we'll get there. And then again, further refining this process, we'll go into step 3 to identify policies and how to achieve those goals. And then step 4 and 5 is going to be about synthesizing that content, drafting the plan, referring it out, finalizing it, and adopting that updated comprehensive plan. And so this is just giving a little bit more detail about step 1, which is where we are today, where we're starting. I want to reiterate that everything we're doing here is grounded in the Vision 2050 core values, but we are going to be starting by evaluating existing conditions where we are. We're inventorying existing countywide planning efforts. There's a lot of work out there that we need to consider, but we are also looking at demographic, economic, social, and geographic conditions and analyzing trends and providing some future projections. As you may or may not know, there was also a 2023 Pitkin County Community Survey where we were able to gather a lot of feedback from the community, and we'll be incorporating those survey results in our existing conditions analysis. And then Hannah Hunt's just going to walk us through the community engagement piece that we anticipate for this step 1 to respond to Suzanne's question about, well, what does that community engagement look like? And then we'll walk through where we hope you will engage. Yeah.
Sure, sounds good. So yeah, the work group meetings, we have the next work group meeting in early June. And that will have a portion where I believe that's on June 3rd, that will be also talking about where the comp plan process and sharing with the work group the status of the comprehensive plan and giving them an update. There will be, in this first step, really identifying targeted outreach on comprehensive plan related topics. So identifying where there may already be planning efforts underway that we're pulling from, and where there's additional community outreach really needed to help us hone the direction. And then additionally, this kind of larger at-large community outreach as connected with the Vision 2050. So that will be portions of that, really the kind of strategy side led from the county and then implemented on the community at large outreach with the consultant team working with us on the code implementation. So the design workshop and GBSM, who you saw at the previous meeting. And our anticipated timeline for this kind of first step is really this summer to have a strong basis from a qualitative and quantitative standpoint, and have larger public awareness that this is happening. And, you know, get into the rhythm with you all of meeting monthly as we move this forward. So our intent is to, with each of these steps, kind of move forward this process, have a report out at that first step with you all, and then continue into the next phase.
Thanks. So, yeah, so let's see. Right.
Yeah.
So in terms of timeline, we recognize that our timeline is probably going to be somewhat dynamic depending on what we get back in terms of community feedback and the as a result of the community engagement piece. But our intent is to get through the process and have a plan adopted by June 2025. That's our goal. And the next slide just just walks through what we've scheduled in terms of planning commission meetings between now and August, the end of the summer. Here we are today looking at the comp plan process and detailed content. As Hannah Hunt said on this 18th of June, you will be reviewing the Owl Creek Master Plan update for adoption. And we also hope to give you just an update on where we are in that existing conditions analysis. In July, we want to engage with you, really do a lot of work on establishing those goals, the elements and goals, and making sure that they're in line with community values. And then we hope to wrap that up by the end of the summer and then launch into the second step. So in terms of your role, Suzanne, I think you were asking some questions about this specifically. Again, just to reiterate, your role is to review, guide, and adopt the updated comprehensive plan. You will also be acting as the formal recommending body to the board on land use code amendments that come out of the Pickens County Vision 2050 project. But we are also hoping that you will engage in community outreach. We haven't laid out a timeline for the specific events yet, but we would like to get some feedback from you as to the extent that you would like to that you would like to participate in the community outreach, recognizing that you're going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting, meeting with staff on a monthly basis just to get this comprehensive plan drafted and adopted. At the same time, we're hoping and want to gauge your interest in participating in the community outreach. It may be that several of you will want to participate in that effort, or you may want to just ask one or two of the Planning and Zoning Commission members to act as point as part of that community outreach effort. So really don't know that we're going to resolve this question today, but we at least wanted to throw it out there and get some feedback from you just based on what you know so far. And I think that's the end of our presentation.
Sign them up.
We did it.
So open to additional questions, or if we want to, talk about the community outreach folks, but happy to dive in more.
This is, I don't want to spend more than 60 seconds on this. Where does it stand with the Castle Creek Master Plan now?
Oh gosh, I guess.
Yeah,
go ahead, Hannah. Have at it.
Well done, Ellen.
Used up 20 seconds.
It's in progress. We're working on establishing the final map of that caucus area and then moving forward to being able to get their updated master plan adopted. But first, their formal area master plan, kind of caucus area map needs to be adopted.
Right, so we are hoping to move that along, and we are working directly with Joe Wells, who is the moderator for the caucus at the moment, and they hope to have a caucus meeting scheduled in the relatively near future so that we can move forward with recognition of a caucus boundary area change. And then we will, once that boundary change is recognized by the Board of County Commissioners, we'll be bringing you a master plan to review for adoption. And my hope is that that will be, within the next couple of months. We'll see. It's really dependent upon the caucus at this point.
Should I call on you?
It seems like your funnel diagram, we should have more asterisks than we currently have. Don't we have a lot more assets / policy documents already established that could funnel into the overall comp plan?
There's a lot. Yeah, I mean, I would say that the intent of this funnel diagram is to kind of simplify, right? And just kind of like, here's the general idea. But yes, there's a lot that's going into each of these different, both plan elements, and then also into each of those different policy areas. So there's a lot in there. And I would say part of what we're doing from an existing conditions standpoint is doing kind of twofold. One is like broad brush kind of community profile demographics, gathering kind of and consolidating that. And then we're also doing a kind of existing contextual conditions piece for each of these 5 elements, which is just that identifying and kind of setting up what's already there in terms of planning efforts and direction that we have so far.
And the follow-up to that is in the policy area, given we think we might have more asterisks, the municipalities then under regional efforts. And so where I'm really going with this is, like, we stopped and started with basalt and PBJ. How do we move some of those conversations forward through this process? And I don't know if it's a you question or no question or both.
I mean, I would say that, the comprehensive plan process is really about the policy direction. And I think some of the specific, PB&J may be something we identify as a priority in the implementation side. So the partnerships, I think acknowledging who those partnerships are, what those strategic partnerships look like is kind of inbounds for the policy section, but how that actually plays out would be identified through the implementation.
I guess one is an observation, which is at the end of this, as you roll the tape forward, 50 to 100 pages sounds daunting through public. That seems like horrible output actually through the public. And one of the most beautiful documents I think Miles produced was the 4-page document for the compass. And so I would love to see the goals of the 50 to 100 page, but also the Hitchhiker's Guide, like the 4-page. And I know that's so it's an output, but I think the public should expect the AIS version of the
executive summary version.
And that's what the compass does. Like, you read it and you're like, oh, this is awesome. So it'll, they get me, they understand values. And compass, it was what Crested View did out of a Miles process.
Through GBSM. Yeah, and it's interesting because the compass, their little document pamphlet is great and a few pages. They also have a comprehensive plan, which is more than that 4 pages. But yeah, I think that we're thinking about how to keep this really legible. I think something that's interesting about the compass plan is that's really about community values, and that's kind of that's really what they're focused on. We're also really guiding land use policy direction. So it's kind of, we're definitely not just in the old school land use policy only, but we're also trying to incorporate community values, but have it be a workable plan that really guides policy direction. So that's definitely a plan that's been on our radar and is a great reference and kind of how we're thinking about from a graphic standpoint. But I think we're recognizing also the policy kind of content areas that we will need to include. But keeping it concise and engaging is definitely the goal.
I'm sitting on this growth committee, you know, what the acronym was, you know, one of the goals all along was simple, but there was no way. There was way too much there, and I think that the growth committee agreed at the end that while simple is a goal, it's not an achievable goal. I think what was more important as we came out of that was to come up with a document that was followable, you were able to follow, right? As opposed to something that's close and simple in a couple of pages, because there's just way too much there. In my, that's the way, I think that's the way that we all agreed. It came to a conclusion.
I think when I hear people, friends, other people in the community complain about the number of regulations we have and all of that, you know, how many there are and how specific they are. I usually tell them that's because we live in such a picky valley. You know, if we just said, oh, kind of hit at it and it'll be okay, we could probably come up with whatever brush Colorado has. But we're all so particular, and you know, we want it to be the best and the cleanest and the quietest and the least intense and all of that. And that it takes a lot. It takes a lot of words to describe it.
And I would just say in response to that, you know, as we're moving this forward, and P&Z is really going to be a part of this process. So that type of feedback and those decisions about how much, or do we leave this in or not, you know, that will ultimately be a decision that, you know, you all are making and guiding and directing us as staff to help craft. So I think, you know, really good to kind of have that as the intent, and then just kind of, as we continue to move through this, think about what level, you know, of detail, or how far, how not. Those will be decisions we make along the way.
Just to reiterate, in our review of other plans, we really have agreed that we want to make this plan heavy on graphics, easy to grasp. You know, we want the content to be meaty, but not really dense. We want it, and so we're totally in agreement that it needs to be really graphic heavy and something that anyone can pick up and digest without having to read pages and pages and pages of text.
Two comments. One, I can't digest meat, so make it veggie friendly. Two, thanks. Is there a good APA document that the board should read, so the P&Z should read, to switch us back to the strategic mode and away from caseload? Like, so we would love an APA document that's like the guide to comprehensive plans that might, like, we'd all have the same vocabulary in terms of planning. And I say that because we've been more caseload for a year. We haven't done, I mean, outside of maybe one master plan. So it might be nice just to get a common vocabulary around comprehensive plans and why, like beyond this conversation. So we would love homework. Or I would love homework. Or if they all have the same homework.
We could share. There's a great primer on comprehensive plans for the APA that's digestible, and where a lot of this is based off of. So as much or little, you know, there, but that is a good place to start.
And for anyone that really wants to nerd out, you can always read Jane Jacobs as the Foundation for Community Planning.
Close to the street.
Be careful what you ask for.
Thanks for the copy, appreciate it.
The old green book, I remember as intriguing and interesting and exciting. Can you compare that to what we're talking about here? Is there any way to come up with something like as understandable as the green book was? Or, you know, with
it'll be even better.
What'd you say?
It'll be even
better.
Yes.
Right, maybe the bright green, but yeah.
Your graphics are really good. They make this understandable.
Great.
So that's all we have. Are there any other thoughts, questions? I know we're probably running haven't even looked at the time. Oh yeah, we're way over 7. Anything else? We really are excited about coming back and working with the Planning and Zoning Commission on, yeah, getting this right.
Yeah, I guess too, in addition to the, there's definitely some resources we can share. Are there other things that would be helpful for us to be able to bring to you to help move through this process? Any further information at this point that would help you all to move forward?
And I guess, go ahead, Doug.
I'd have to say Jeffrey's comment about some homework or vernacular to understand the process would certainly help me.
Yeah.
It's not a place that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I second that. We've been doing a lot of GMQS and things that, aren't as big pictures. This would be nice to see some guidelines or something,
Yeah. we
Then
can definitely-
I guess before we wrap, if that's where we're going, do you have any inclination amongst yourselves about your interest in participating in the community public outreach efforts that are going to be coming in the coming months?
We tried to distract you so you would not ask that question again.
I think we voted Chelsea and.
I'd be willing enough to talk to you, Ellen. And you won't pass on anything I said to any of these people. And I also wanted to ask, Rye, if in talking about, I don't know that I got a clear answer or that there is one about whether or not we would interface with the growth committee people who now the work groups. I'd be interested in doing that just to hear their feedback, to say, you are way off in what you're doing, or you're getting close to what we wanted.
And maybe I'll jump on that, right?
But I'm not sure that it is appropriate now.
But yes, Suzanne, I think that's what we're thinking is,
Okay.
right, I mean, they're no longer an appointed, body. We will continue to kind of touch base with them.
Yes.
I think, right, there is a place there if you or some other member of the P and Z wanted to sit in on those meetings and be able to kind of report back what you're hearing. Not, a little bit like you did before, when they were meeting, but we're definitely not looking to, them as being, like having joint meetings with you and their entire committee. We definitely want to be careful about constituting you all as like needing to post, notices of meeting. Because that's not really the intent of how we want to, we want to touch base back with the work group. They put in a lot of time and we want to be able to say, hey, here's what we're working on. Are you feeling like we're, consistent with the intent where you were headed? But we want to be, so that's a community engagement opportunity for someone or two on the P and Z. If you wanted to join those meetings to see, Doug was a member of that committee. If you'd like to be like, hey, I would like to join those meetings, they're going to be once every few months, maybe. So there's that kind of an engagement opportunity. And then there'll be other things along the way that we can kind of let you know.
I think it's easier. I see where you're heading, and I think it would be better to just stay clean and clear of that and have things funneled through you for my purposes. When Joe and Chelsea and I sat in, we sat outside the circle, and there were clear guidelines of you can ask questions and I could ask a question and ask a clarifying question, but I wasn't to make comments, unless I was asked for an opinion or.
You made some good ones.
Well, I had to go the long way around to say, have a clarifying comment. What were you thinking? In doing that, but that made it clear. That made it clear. So, thank you.
Great.
As an option, once we have a calendar put together for these various different community engagement events, including meeting with work group, meeting with focus groups. Perhaps we can get that calendar out to you, and if you have an interest if there's a P and Z member or up to two P and Z members who have an interest in participating in a particular event, we can ask you to let us know by a certain time. And or another option is just to say, hey, you know what, we'd rather just have two P and Z members that will attend as point for the whole P and Z on a regular basis. Would it be helpful once we have the community outreach calendar laid out to
what's out there?
That's good.
And
Yeah.
we can have more conversation at
Yeah,
that point, once there's a better plan to put in front of you.
Yeah, Ellen, I think that's helpful, is once we have a calendar and a better defined idea of what that participation from the P and Z members looks like.
Yeah.
Then we can send out those invites and say, hey, this is when the meeting is. We can see who has time to jump in. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think that works. At
All right,
least we'll
great.
start there, thanks.
Great. Thank you all.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Great, I think, motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, does it do a second?
Yes.
All right, great, thank you, guys.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Stop selling.
Stop.
I know.
Like
Fun
we
to
went
know.
through like